Welcome to another commentary done by Diggity. We've got Tousan going up against Klauso. Klauso starting in the upper right-hand corner as the blue Terran, upper left-hand corner. We got Tousan starting as the red Terran. So it is going to be a TVP final. One direction or another. This is going to be on Radeon to start the series off. And I will be interested to see what Klauso looks like in his TVT. Tousan, man, it's been a while since I've seen a Tousan TVT. I think the last Tousan TVT that I can recall is Tousan versus Do Life back in like BSL 12 or 13, something along those lines. Man, I've been doing this a bit, haven't I? But in that series, I remember, I think Tousan ended up with the victory by utilizing some dropship play, but the map was a bit funky. In fact, I cannot remember the map off the top of my head. This is a big macro-oriented map. And if Klauso plays anything like he plays TVT, anything like he plays TVP, I could see him being very, very successful. What this does, buckle up though, because this is going to be, I guess I should say, take the seatbelt off. What's the opposite of this is going to be Fast and Furious potentially? This is potentially going to be a longer macro-oriented map because Radeon is large, and TVT tends to be more, unless you see big vulture floods right in the early stages, it tends to be more macro-oriented to begin with. So buckle up is usually like, oh, you're going to accelerate really fast, right? And so you need to buckle up. What's the opposite of that? Of like, take your seat and enjoy the enriching cinema for long periods of time? Barracks, this is kind of an odd barracks placement here from Tousan. I'm used to seeing it a little bit further to the north, or maybe even on the low ground on occasion, because it's probably going to be a very rapid liftoff to get it out here. This does leave a seal opportunity for Klauso if he wanted to try to deny scouting information. SCV starting to make its way to scout out for Tousan, by the way. Now I'm gonna have to think about that. What is it's like, we're in for a long ride, so it's like, buy some snacks, get the beef jerky out. We are seeing a refinery grab here and no refinery grab, by the way. So this might be barracks into expansion here from Klauso to try to take an early economic bump. He's starting to make his way up to that left-hand corner. That being said, I have seen Tousan go for aggressive early game play all the way across the board. Supply depot kind of at an odd angle on the corner as well, that will provide, and kind of hiding it here, which will provide information to incoming potential dropships, factory dropping as well. And we are in fact going to see a barracks marine into command center on the opposite corner. It'll be interesting to see whether Tousan just opts to go standard vulture meta at this stage, and this scouting SCV could be huge. Now here's the thing, Klauso got that instant scout. Tousan, if he's on top of things, should go cross map, but it looks like he's going to continue to the bottom right scouting pattern. Usually with the timing of everything, that's when you should expect it. The Marine taking it, looks like we had to pause. A little bit of SCV damage and an exit here. The other thing, I'm not sure what the lag was like between these two guys. I should look up, because I know Tousan's in South America. I think Klauso's in Germany. That's quite the distance to travel, and that could play into things as well. Vulture micro might be a little bit more challenging in those environments, but we got a bunker now constructing on the front, and SCV finally making its way out there. Tousan is grabbing a command center, but somewhat later, significantly later, because this command center just about finished. So the early economic lead certainly going to be in Klauso's favor. Is the SCV going to be able to confirm and is going to be able to wander in and see the factory, and the factory might drop a machine shop immediately in response to this. Yeah, there's the immediate machine shop drop. So while Klauso does end up with an early economic lead, what this dizzle allow, all of a sudden getting into Snoop talk, what this does allow Tousan to do is go ahead and bump that tech lead by getting that machine shop and siege tech early on. Now, I kind of like the economic play from Klauso, because on maps like Vermeer, or what are some other maps that have Vermeer, Polypoid, places where you can kind of take an early forward base and really abuse early game siege tanks for a large degree of map control. I feel unless you're going for multiple factory push right off the bat, Tousan dropping a second factory, by the way, and actually upgrading mines to start so just going to be the mine upgrade. The siege tanks don't play well for you, but going for the machine shop and mines, what this is going to allow Tousan to do, as far as a follow-up vulture mine plays, is to have a superior number of vultures, or an equivalent number of vultures out in the map, but with better upgrades, and having those mines early and being able to have them coating the map where you can really see what your opponent's up to comparatively can be a massive advantage. So waiting on the mine upgrade, it is going to be Vulture attacking Vulture in the first 2 shots, and this again is where maybe lag is playing a bit of a factor there. But now we got 2 Vultures out in the front. They should be able to coat this base in mines, and that will help keep an eye on any sort of movement and particularly troop counts. It looks like we're going to see a 3 factory follow-up from Klauso and a siege tank immediately to follow. But Tousan going to end up with early informational advantage early, and this is every once in a while you'll see a Terran be clever and unload a Marine and walk out, but this is also a sufficient enough minefield where it's going to be a minute before Klauso can really feel comfortable making his way out of the base. Is switching to Goliath to help deal with counter Vulture, but that is going to put him down siege, as Goliaths do not do well against siege tanks, and maybe he was hoping to go ahead and pick that barracks off. If you do end up with 4 Goliaths out on the front, that tends to be the magic number, 3 or 4, to go ahead and clear these mines outside the natural expansion. Makes it a little bit easier to micro in them. But right now, Tousan down a little bit on workers, but ahead on tech overall. Oh, we got to be careful, Goliath, wandering into this. You might end up losing your life. One thing Goliaths are not good at is doing kind of that dual swap, engaging the targets in the air and the ground. And there we see, ooh, 1 health left. There we see the results. More mines, and wow, Tousan just moving right up to the front. +1 weapons very rapidly here from Klauso, maybe recognizing that he's going to have to punch his way out. And he's mostly gone Goliath at this stage, so even the presence of the single siege tank with siege tech is going to put Tousan at a massive advantage. And he's already, doing some damage out on the front. Some SCVs, I'm not sure what the SCVs thought they were doing, but we'll see if this is enough. So spotting 2 siege tanks here. 2 siege tanks certainly beat a large portion of this, particularly with the mine coverage. So all the Marines taken out, the SCV providing some coverage, and the Goliath's going to go ahead and back out, but enough Goliaths are going to be able to take down that barracks, which is going to lock Tousan to the 4 factory count momentarily, and that might have been an emergency build. That's also going to prevent some of that floating spotting to go ahead and hammer in. But Tousan with the nice minefield, the siege tanks to the front, Klauso continuing to push out Goliaths. This is sufficient enough to hold, but let's see if this is sufficient enough to break out as time progresses. +1 weapons is going to be well ahead, but I don't know that +1 weapons is going to be enough. More Goliaths making their way across. Still a minefield here. A lot of these tanks sieged, but wow, that was enough siege tanks in between them to break through there. And now a siege tank just left to the south, able to just walk up and wipe that out. I'm a bit surprised. So Goliaths tend to do pretty well against siege tanks, but that was some nice micro by Klauso and not a lot of focus fire on Tousan. There was not a great siege tank spread, so honestly fewer siege tank shots and not enough underneath support, but I was expecting the mines to go off and clear something else. So nice clearage by Klauso. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind, that I was expecting kind of the differential of having to attack ground and a separate target to be a little bit more splash from the mines to be a much larger factor there. But worker count just about even. Another barracks getting dropped. We have a starport dropping, second machine shop, and the upgrades there for Klauso. But Klauso, after clearing that, going to go ahead and drop a command center here to grab a quick third. So going to end up with a quick economic lead. Tousan playing a little bit more defensively here, going ahead and grabbing his third base. A whole bunch of Goliaths steamrolling across the map. This is kind of one of those instances where in these sufficient numbers, as long as they're micro properly, the mines are somewhat less of a threat. These siege tanks are a bit better spread. Now I'm a little bit like, I feel like I'm gaslighting myself a little bit where I'm like, is this enough Goliaths to punch through that many siege tanks? Usually I'd say no, but after that last engagement, I'm like, I don't know, maybe. Klauso's starting to move up, and that +1 weapons is going to finish pretty rapidly. So there, across this bridge point, Klauso backing up, because that would funnel the Goliaths into a close location. Usually I would say, like, yeah, this is a big lead for Tousan, but if you look at the raw supply, that is a massive supply lead for Klauso. A big bulk of that is in, what am I going to call, tier 0.15. So let's call siege tanks pure tier 2. Goliath's tier 1.5. I mean, technically you've got to build an armory to build them, so they are tier 2 as well. But point being, Goliaths don't hit as hard as siege tanks typically. But when you have a 30 supply differential of Goliaths, who cares? I will quote Day 9 is sometimes just having more mass is all you need. If you just have a more of something, you can kind of punch through. So right now, Klauso able to provide the pressure he's looking for despite the siege tank superiority on Tousan's side of the map. Barracks floating back out there. We do have that third base rapidly up. Tousan doing a great job of macroing though and getting that third base saturated. So the supply just about... So worker supply just about even. But supply count slightly in Klauso's favor, and he's got a sizable roaming army mid-map. Gonna go ahead and siege up, and where Tousan had kind of a reversal of fortune here, where Tousan had a massive front door lead a minute ago, all of a sudden he's got an army sitting on his doorstep. And he's gonna hit +1 weapons somewhat later here. Vulture is getting tempted forward and wiped out. They're kind of... They're the annoying stepbrother who's very young, like the 3-year-old stepbrother of this battle, where they're playing football, where occasionally they'll hand off the ball to him so he feels like he's useful. But it's up to the siege tanks and the Goliaths and the heavy hitters here. Tousan sweeping across double angles and maybe looking to get a projection angle here to the south, or maybe just staging up to go ahead and deny that, to set up the 9 o'clock for himself. We have some Goliaths that were wandering to the south. They're getting wiped out nearly immediately. So just bleeding some troops off, but this is leaving the front door somewhat open. There's 3 machine shops down already for Tousan to continually pump those siege tanks out, however. So Tousan's still at a worker, or I should say supply deficit, but really closing things, able to secure a potential movement towards a 9 o'clock base. That 12 o'clock base is in Klauso's hands. And a single Vulture has managed to somehow sneak through the lines. It's not going to be able to find anything here at the upper corner, but we'll see. Single Wraith making its way out, by the way, because we have a complete lack of anti-air for Tousan right now. He skipped Marines everything and dropping a 4th factory, or sorry, 4th machine shop to really pump those siege tanks out. We have 3 factories and a 4th machine shop dropping here for Klauso, the opposite side, perhaps on that comp side. He's moving up to the 7 factory count. We're already at a 6 factory count with a 7th on the way. And another base getting grabbed bottom left-hand corner. 2 Goliaths at the near position. The Vultures will be able to engage. I don't know if they're going to be sufficient to defend. So this could be an interesting little battle here, bottom left. So Vultures moving up. Depends on the engagement point. Like that. Mines wipe them out. Kind of some luck right there. And that's the problem with Goliaths when they're trying to do the multi-targeting. Klauso, recognizing that angle, going to go ahead and crash down and clean up that loose defensive perimeter at the 9 o'clock, but that's causing a counterattack from Tousan straight up the middle, although some mines going off on these siege tanks as he's crossing. Maybe he didn't anticipate Klauso. He's like, okay, you're light in Vultures, maybe you don't have some mines. Getting some nice counter mine shots though, and Klauso might have overplayed his hand, because now we got nearly 9 siege tanks outside his natural expansion, which is so yeah, you got some troops here in the middle, but Tousan's cut off reinforcements and looks like he's going to be able to go ahead and walk up to Klauso's 3rd, which is a huge tactical shift maneuver. So that's drawing Klauso back. Does he have enough to defend and breach? The SCVs pulling off the line to defend themselves. Tousan might have overplayed his hand. Nice mine explosion there for Klauso, clearing all of that out. And the SCVs plus the siege tank's going to be able to clear things. We'll have to see what the supply count is at the end of all this, however. It looks like it's still slightly in Klauso's favor, but a nice defensive ring there. Klauso did leave 2 siege tanks underneath to get some bonus damage. And there is an absolute grapple here in the middle. Looks like Klauso might be able to hold this. He got the earlier siege and has the Wraith to provide spotting, as well as just a superior amount of siege tanks out on the low ground. But it is just a 7 supply differential. So this Wraith actually might be what causes the major difference here. Do we have no turrets being built out the front? They're slowly pecking away. That's the problem with Wraith. This is even though they can shoot ground, it takes a really long time to get anything accomplished here. SCV repairing the wrong siege tank, and with that SCV repairing that siege tank, that will be sufficient to keep that siege tank alive. 4th base up for Tousan, so he's ahead a base, but he might be ahead a base and down a game. The way things are looking right this second is Klauso continuing to shove mid-map. Tousan quickly reinforcing here, pushing everything underneath. That Wraith still providing some good spotting. More siege tanks filling in that gap. And this is going to be a big moment here. If Klauso can push through and break Tousan at some point, he'll be in a great position here. But if he doesn't break through, he's going to be down a base of production. Tousan already up 9 supply suddenly. And that Wraith, yeah, just pecking away. Providing an eyeful. Unfortunately, not enough. And we got another SCV already making its way bottom left. Secondary problem for Tousan is he's got all sorts of resources, but he needs to spend them. He is at the 9 factory count. Does he have them, all of them humming? It looks like he does. They actually might. I'm wondering at what point would you drop a 5th machine shop in this scenario, because he's got the economy to roll it. I know it's not typical in this scenario. Barracks also going to get wiped out, so lots of spotting information, but some vultures are free, making their way bottom left. And this is totally undefended, so Tousan may be going to run into a spot of trouble here. He's going to, if they dive bottom left, that might just be a delayed and or canceled command center, which would be a big victory over losing something else. Klauso also shoving this interior siege tank defense line. The vulture is getting distracted briefly, and that's allowing the rescue crew to make its way up. So Klauso not able to break center line, and the vultures, even though they've got high ground advantage, falling behind Tousan all of a sudden with a flurry of macro off the additional bases way ahead. And Klauso just now trying to establish, it looks like a vulture was able to slip through the lines bottom right. Some SCVs sacrificing their lives heroically. I think that was more a miss. No, now they're gonna battle on those lines. Honestly, this isn't that large a loss either for Tousan at this stage. He might have been a little bit, that frees up a little bit of supply. 65 is not a bad SCV count to have, but Klauso needs to grab an additional base in a hurry. He's got to rebuild here. So keeping task, excuse me, on the bases here. The main is mined out. Natural expansion will be out in another minute or two. We do have 2 bases running, but, or 2 bases established, but not, I should say, a base established, but the second one on the way, where Tousan at a massive advantage, where he's got this base and another one in the wings, and that's decently saturated. And we're seeing a repeat of the earlier stage where Klauso breaking off some troops to go bottom left, and Tousan feeling like he's got enough of a supply lead and enough of a troop count where he's going to just push through and go for the natural expansion once again. Some mines catching a lot of these troops, however. And we got vultures going ahead and attacking the 3rd in the midst of this, trying to get what positive damage they can. And the siege tanks making their way up to that 3rd as well. And actually, if Tousan just lifts off and backs these SCV up and sends them a long direction, this could work out heavily in his favor. So now a massive siege tank line outside of Klauso's base. Klauso's going to have to reinforce from that location. He's losing mining at his 1 effective mining base, which means also he's not going to be able to transfer SCVs to the bottom right. So this might have been a winning maneuver for Tousan. A little bit late to get the SCVs out, so he's going to be down on SCVs, but keep in mind that doesn't matter because it's effective mining SCVs that are out for Tousan on 2 fresh bases out on the map, and he has an option to transfer straight mid-map. It looks like is he already gonna, I'm trying to see if there's SCVs already doing that. He can transfer SCVs straight down to the bottom left as long as he's careful on the transfer point. So all the SCVs gone. Klauso is barely mining. He's not going to be mining shortly. And Tousan has a massive advantage. I think this is a bad rally point now for Klauso, where some units are just rallying into a dead point. This has been lifted off. We have a dropship nearby and a few siege tank bombs on the siege tank line, and Tousan, I keep doing that, calling him Life for some reason. Klauso going for a big suicide push to the natural expansion, bringing SCVs and absolutely everything. The initial wave does not breach. He's got a lot of siege tanks behind this, however. Does the secondary line breach? Looks like the secondary line does not. It's held, and unfortunately now for Klauso, he's out of resources. He's not going to have enough for a follow-up push, and Tousan is continuing to produce troops. Although Tousan donating some troops as far as the follow-up dropship press across the edge, it looks like he is going to be able to clear that out. And as soon as this is cleared out, Klauso's got next to nothing out on the map. He's got 3 vultures, and that is it. Tousan can reinforce right back to the natural expansion. He's comsatting, saying, okay, do I have a seal? There's only 5 siege tanks there, 7 siege tanks in the opposite corner. Vultures are going to go ahead and clear out what's left. The other vultures have found that bottom right-hand base, and they're slowly pecking away at this. And in a wild back-and-forth match, Tousan potentially closing out game 1. One last push here from Klauso with the SCVs to try to breach, but they're arriving just as the reinforcements of Tousan are arriving. And that is going to be GG. Very back and forth, but Klauso just overextending a bit through some engagements, and Tousan making very brave decisions to reinforce the natural expansion to close out the match. Great play both directions. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for listening.